What's up, Taiwan? I'm Erika Liu with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. A man has driven a car into the barricade outside the presidential office in Taipei. The car was spray painted with characters that appeared to say, among other things, SOS, National Cognitive Warfare. An official spokesperson says that the driver has been handed over to the police for questioning. A growing number of countries, including Taiwan, are concerned by China's overproduction of cheap steel. Now, Taiwan's leading steelmaker is seeking anti-dumping action. Jean-Man Trieste has this report.
Faced with dwindling demand at home, China's massive steel sector is looking abroad. But an influx of Chinese steel has come with backlash, with India and Mexico introducing tariffs. The United States, Thailand, and Brazil could follow them. Now, Taiwan's joining the list of countries feeling the pressure from cheaper Chinese competition. Taiwan's biggest steelmaker, CSC, says it's gathering evidence of dumping. And while the Economy Ministry has promised to respect WTO rules, it says it and other agencies will act if there are signs China has engaged in unfair practices.
受到国际不公平竞争受到实质损害的话，可以协助他们提出反倾销的控诉。财政部是负责调查这倾销的行为，经济部负责调查是不是受到实质损害。真的受到损害的话，我们就会依照法令来课征反倾销税。
But tariffs or not, China remains the world's biggest steel producer, offering attractive prices. Economists say that to compete, Taiwan needs to better market its steel.
政策上面应该思考如何走出台湾自己的特色，譬如说有没有减碳的一个钢材，当做一个绿色产品发展的一个趋势，可以高质化产品差异的一个策略走向，跟中国大陆一些产品做一些区隔。
Economists say it's important for firms to work closer with the government to counter dumping, but also to look beyond the current Chinese glut so Taiwan steel is competitive even in the future. Leon Lin and Jean-Man Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Celebrations are underway in Hong Kong as the city marks 27 years since its handover from the UK to China. In a statement, Chief Executive John Lee lauded the newly implemented Article 23 security law, which enshrines a Beijing-imposed national security law into Hong Kong's own basic law. China joined in on the celebrations, announcing travel permits for Hong Kong's non-Chinese permanent residents to visit the mainland and a gift of 2 giant pandas for the city. France has wrapped up the first round of its legislative elections, and exit polls are pointing toward a historic win for the far right. The breakthrough by the country's National Rally Party casts a spotlight on the rise of the far right across Europe. Louise Watt reports.
Protests in Paris instead of celebration, after the far right won the most votes in the first round of French parliamentary elections. Polls suggest Marine Le Pen's National Rally could win a majority for the first time and form France's first far-right government since it was occupied by Nazi Germany during World War II. It's a scenario that's alarming many ahead of the final runoff on July the 7th.
Le RN n'est même pas encore passé au pouvoir entièrement, qu'il y a du racisme x 40, qu'il y a des agressions x 40.
C'est un climat qui va se tendre, je pense.
The National Rally has promised to drastically cut illegal and legal immigration.
Nous ne faisons rien. Nos nations seront livrées à une submersion migratoire d'une ampleur jamais atteinte dans l'histoire.
The National Rally's historically high showing in the first round follows its success in European Parliament elections, where it won more seats than President Emmanuel Macron's party. And it's not just in France where the far right is making gains. Across Europe, there's a shift to the populist and radical right.
Aki a migrációt támogatja, az a terrorizmus is támogatja. Mi ellenezzük a terrorizmust, ezért nem támogatjuk a migrációt sem.
E acredito que os nossos filhos, os nossos sobrinhos, os nossos netos nos vão agradecer por esta luta histórica que tivemos pela liberdade, pela dignidade e pela nossa identidade.
The far right's increasing success in the polls comes as thousands of migrants continue to make the perilous journey to Europe. Last year, the European Union saw more than 1 million people apply for asylum, the highest number since 2016. Most want to go to Germany.
Wir wissen, die Europäische Union braucht Migration. Deutschland braucht Zuwanderung, um seinen großen Bedarf an Arbeitskräften zu decken, der in den nächsten Jahren akut ist.
But back in France, the National Rally's very different message on immigration is resonating with voters.
Effectivement, mais peut-être remettre un petit peu les choses en place avec des gens qui sont chez nous et qui n'arrivent pas à s'adapter effectivement donc à notre pays. Moi, j'ai
vous séduit. On a essayé tous les côtés et ça va pas, donc après pourquoi pas essayer le Rassemblement national.
The National Rally hopes to win an absolute majority. While that may not happen, it's still poised to become the largest force in French politics. But the party and those across Europe that have been buoyed by a surge in anti-immigration sentiment will still need to grapple with official projections that by 2030 the EU will need millions more workers to help keep its economies going, many of whom will likely need to come from outside its borders. Klein Wong and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Japan has launched its flagship H3 rocket into space for the second time. The rocket was carrying an upgraded observation satellite, which will be collecting data from Earth for disaster response and map making. It's also capable of monitoring military activity like missile launches. The H3 had a rough start with its maiden flight, failing last year. But Japan is expected to launch at least 5 of the rockets total before next March. Taiwan is aiming for a stronger overall national defense. One milestone was a revamp of mandatory military service, which was extended to 12 months from the start of this year. And now the government plans to make more use of the country's reservists. Wesley Lewis reports.
These military recruits in Taiwan are preparing to serve in the event of a conflict. The country has recently changed its conscription laws. In January, mandatory military service was extended from 4 months to 1 year. And now, Taiwan's set to revamp its substitute service system too. Substitute service reservists serve outside of the military, assisting the police, fire departments, and government offices. According to government statistics, there are just under 200,000 of these reservists in Taiwan. In the past 3 years, the military was only able to recruit a few thousand each year. This year, it plans to recruit 58,000, which would be a new record. The government says these changes will strengthen the country's ability to respond to a crisis. Many of these reservists will be trained as emergency responders. Defense analysts say this diversified training is essential for bolstering military preparedness.
在战争中反而会需要更多的消防人员、救护人员那避难指引的人员、替代役的人员其实他们这个民防体系中一个最重要的核心。
And the government says it has not ruled out increasing the duration of reservist training.
在预算更合理的时候，也可以把教训的天数增加，来让役男对他既有的这个专长可以复习。
Taiwan's military has been struggling with low recruitment rates, exacerbated by the country's falling birth rate. But as Taiwan continues to grapple with a growing military threat from China, reservists may soon find themselves shouldering more responsibility for the nation's defense. John Su and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's shrinking population means many schools are struggling to stay open. But that's not the whole picture. As John Van Trieste reports, schools with good reputations are getting more applicants than they can handle.
Zhangxing Junior High School is in an unusual position. As other nearby schools see enrollment shrink, Zhangxing's prestige has parents competing to get their kids in. This year, it's had to turn away 168 students who would otherwise qualify. The Zhang siblings' parents are among those who'd pinned their hopes on the school, but the 2 children haven't gotten in. Their relatives say, unlike some families who move their family registry to a different school district to get kids into good schools, they are bona fide locals.
随便想应该都知道说很多人都是寄户的啊，但是我们是在地，就是出生就在住在这边的。
This year's entering class is definitely out of the ordinary. For one thing, it's bigger than normal. All these kids were born in the Year of the Dragon, a Chinese zodiac year thought to be good for having children. But also, Zhangxing's principal says their exam scores have been above average.
彰兴国中今年的会考成绩比往年都要更好。我们如果依照去年的录取标准，彰中彰女，我们今年是破200个。
But since 2021, local officials have been trying to stop this type of crowding by spreading resources around so that children in more rural areas can get a decent education. They've restricted enrollments in 15 schools around Changhua County. Still, parents are determined to squeeze their kids into schools they think offer the best, leaving officials with the tricky task of keeping the rest of the local schools on an equal footing. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
A new art exhibition in Taipei is bringing people out in droves. The main draw, a miniature version of vintage Taiwanese street scenes, has shown the challenges of making art in the big city. Chris Gorin has the story.
A few quiet moments, captured in miniature. This 1:12 scale model of Taiwan streets has become the centerpiece of a new exhibition showcasing the work of multimedia artist and filmmaker Jiang Liren.
这个城市里面，它其实它不是一个就是说任何一个地方的一个缩影，而是根据我小时候的一些记忆，不同的地方成长的一些记忆，去把这些对这些地方的印象，把它拼凑起来，变成一个记忆中的城市这样子。
The work, called Battle City Finale, took 14 years to complete and explores what Zhang calls survival in the city, as reflected in his comic books and his action-packed animated films, shot using more than 100 papier-mâché characters. The work not only allows him to tell stories, but also to hang on to memories in a fast-moving world.
就因为我们现在其实大概可以感觉到是在一个比较开始进入一个比较快速发展的一个阶段，所以说在很多东西它会在我们还来不及记得的时候就消失了。
And Zhang's sense of nostalgia is striking a chord with viewers.
所以其实在拍照的时候，从镜头上看过去，或是其实用眼睛去看的话，你都会觉得这是一个小时候的回忆。对，所以是还蛮怀念的。
就很多小时候的回忆，像幼儿园的娃娃车，就黄色的那个，就我们小时候真的都坐过。
The attention to detail and vintage vibe has seen the exhibition explode on social media, and that's put strain on the small Museum of National Taipei University of Education. Foot traffic for Zhang's exhibition is 5 to 10 times higher than the museum's usual, and to cope, it's had to increase staffing and implement an online reservation system. Despite its popularity, housing Zhang's work is a challenge. He had to relocate 6 times while completing it, and every move or exhibition causes damage to the model city.
主要是因为我自己没有地方去收纳这些东西了，所以说在这个展览结束之后，那如果它这个模型还没有一些其他的地方去的话，它可能就是要会清运掉还是怎样。
But those in the art world are determined to preserve Zhang's work.
因为这艺术家张立人的作品，其实大家都可以看得到，这个作品是多么的特别，而且是无论是在各个层面的意义上，其实都对于台湾的整个当代艺术的发展上面，应该可以是留有一个艺术史上的一个位置啊。
The museum says it's reaching out to several venues interested in permanently housing Zhang's work. They're optimistic, but the search continues. Whether on the screen or in person, this little city leaves a big impression. It's now up to those who find value in these kinds of unique artworks to make sure it stands the test of time. Kama Xu and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, dive in with thousands of people in Chile taking part in the country's traditional winter dip. I'm Erika Liu. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, follow TaiwanPlus News on social media.